Well, Richie, as you know, the world lost McCoy Tyner a few days ago. So I'd love you to say a few words about his music and his great influence in the world of jazz.
McCoy, he was like part of Mount Rushmore. He was like a giant redwood tree in the jazz world. He was like the Pacific Ocean, okay? Because he came with an amazing sense of power and intensity and honesty. A lot of guys played with power. A lot of guys played honestly. But McCoy was incredibly innovative in that time in the early 60s, 62, 63. I was 16, 17, 18 years old, very young, and just really getting my legs together with basic jazz stuff. I'd been a classical piano player since I was 5. Then I heard jazz when I was 12. But you have to know how impossibly overwhelming it was to hear McCoy, who was already playing the train and was doing it all. He was completely far ahead of everybody, and still a young guy. And I just remember feeling just very inspired, but also depressed because it was so far away from where I was. And it was actually far away from what almost everybody was doing, okay? And this stayed with me, and I never wanted to give up. I never felt like, well, I'm just going to stop. It's too much. No. It inspired me to put my head down and work and study and try and figure it out. Remember, in the early 60s, there was only one jazz school, and that was Berklee Music, and they were not teaching that shit there, okay? So we had to figure out the stuff ourselves with records, listening. There were no transcription books. There was no internet. And me and Dave and some other guys just kind of tried to figure it out. We did. He created his own language, totally personal language, which was based solidly on the foundation of Bud Powell. And those guys, and the real bebop guys, they also had an orchestral approach, not unlike Arcadum in terms of technique. But McCoy was a real group player. He loved the bass and the drums. He loved to accompany. And his harmonic thing was just absolutely innovative and unheard of in the world of jazz. There it was. Now, McCoy, of course, besides being influenced by Stravinsky and Bartok and Scriabin, Shostakovich, etc., created his very own language in the jazz music. It was, in other words, he didn't just take what Stravinsky and Bartok did and play it on the piano behind Coltrane. He had his own creative combination, plus his own amazing rhythmic flow. And this was an amazing accomplishment. It wasn't the first time anybody did that. Of course, I mean, we used the Bud Powell, Oscar Peterson, and Bill. They're integrating classical music into their playing too, but different styles. Bill was integrating more romantic things, Rachmaninoff, and the pretty parts of Ravel. But McCoy was really after Bartok and Stravinsky and much more chromatic and dissonant people. But here's the other thing. You can have all the great voicings and innovative chords in the world, but if you can't swing, and if the music is not rhythmically totally happening, then it doesn't mean much. The same thing is if you can really swing and you have good lines, but harmonically it's kind of dull and vanilla and not really contemporary, it's not so important. McCoy had the combination. He had the intellect, he had the intuition, he had the burn, he had also delicacy and sensitivity. And I met him, he's a great guy. He's a very warm guy, very serious, very modest, not an asshole. He's really genuine. I'll give you a very short story. In around 1980, in New York City, a club called Westlife in Manhattan, I had a new band called Gargoyles with Randy Becker, Dave Liebman, myself, and Rashid Ali, Train's last drummer. And this is an experimental band, and we had special music for it, and it was very exciting. And I just wanted to say that it was a real band that we rehearsed. The following week, we did the same band, but we added Eddie Gomez because we wanted to have a bass function. That worked out fine, too. And I was playing there on the weekend, and we started the first set. Not so many people there. And I was into the music, and I picked my head up after the set, and I see McCoy is fucking standing right near the bar, clapping his hands and smiling. Good thing I didn't see him, because I didn't know him. I was totally honored that he came see me, but, you know, I don't get nervous. I just be aware of it. Anyway, I went over to him and gave me a big hug and a handshake, and said, Richie, I really enjoyed that. Really. Thank you. And he meant it, man. So he came to see me, okay? And that meant the world to me. And he really liked it. We talked. He was so cool. No, like, I'm the shit, and you're just a young white guy. It was none of that. It was totally cool. And I'll never forget that. And that really helped my confidence, you know, because I was out there stretching out, man. And, of course, using, you know, his influence. He influenced everyone that came after him. Everybody. He influenced Chick, of course. He influenced Herbie. He influenced, all of us. You know, Joey and me and Brad. So, because he brought the modal chromatic up into playing. But personally, he was such a great person. That's not always the case. Sometimes the guy is, you know, distant or, yeah, how you doing? And that's okay, too, because I don't have to marry him or like him. I have the records. She's not there in the room. But McCoy was consistent, you know. And you could hear it in his playing. He was a very spiritual guy and a very simple guy. He was not like ideological, and he was also not very analytical. He would never talk about it. I said, well, McCoy, what are you doing there? What is that chord? I mean, he said, well, I don't really think of it in that way. It's just D minor. And, of course, it was more than D minor. He just either didn't want to talk about it or was not thinking in those terms. I mean, both things are possible. Anyway, it's none of my business. But the stature that he had, I always keep saying this, but it's true. At that time, in the early 60s, there was no other piano player in the world that could give Coltrane the platform that he gave him and made that way of playing harmonically and rhythmically, and in terms of power and projection. He had the most power, McCoy. He was big, strong, and he hit with his left hand from up in the air, and he was not banging the piano. He was getting a gigantic sound, like Horowitz or Rubinstein when they played those big bass notes in the Rachmaninoff piano concertos. He never banged McCoy, never, because he had so much power in his arm and the weight of his arm, you know. Plus, McCoy's whole style was revolutionary. Because in the bebop piano players, and the great bebop piano players like Powell, you know, and Jones, the left hand was in the middle of the piano. Because originally was, you know, the left hand was like the stride, it was like boom, chank, because bass players were not so great and couldn't hear them. But then the bass players came in, you had strong bass players like Mingus, etc. So bebop piano players, they moved the left hand towards the middle of the piano, let the bass take care of the bass function, right, with the drums. But McCoy wanted more power and projection. So he decided to bring back the left hand, those gigantic fifths, like boom, bang. He brought that in, so he had a three-tiered, three-registers approach. He had a bass function, like a pedal point, with usually a fifth. Then he had a big fat modal chord in the middle of the piano, like F, B flat, E flat. Then he had his melodic line. And this gave him tremendous power in the projection of the sound of the piano. It was enormous. And it had to be, because with Elvin Jones, who was one of the loudest, most powerful, wonderful swing drummers of the world, and Jimmy Garrison, who had a gigantic sound with his bass, I swear to God, I once went to see Train, and I was standing in the Vanguard upstairs before you go downstairs. The Vanguard's in the basement, and I could hear the bass. It was thumping like in my heart. And Jimmy Casson was no amplifier. He had a gigantic sound, pure big sound, but thick iron strings. His fingers were like steel, right? So these days were the intensity and the volume. It was striking. It knocked me over. The difference between a Haydn symphony and a Beethoven symphony, okay? Haydn symphony is great. It's elegant. It's totally pristine, okay? And then you have Beethoven symphony, and it's a beast. It covers you, wipes you out. And McCoy had that power. And also grace, very important, grace. And he could swing. It was not stiff. He had his own time feel. He had a triplet behind his right-hand lines, but his actual articulation was even. But it was perfect. It was swinging. Guess who copped that? Chick Corea. Now he sings, of course. We all did. So McCoy is very high up on my list of essential jazz pianists, and in terms of influencing more than just the instrument. That's how you know if someone's like an innovator, and very important historically, in my view, is if they influence other musicians across the instruments, like Charlie Parker influenced every instrument, not just the alto sax, right? And Coltrane, every instrument. McCoy, every instrument. There aren't too many of those, you know. So I'm sad about McCoy. I mean, he was not very active in the last years. One of my favorite years from McCoy, of course, when he was with Train, and then he had his own bands, but there was a particular band on this CD called Song of the New World, which is also a big band record. And it has Al Muzon on drums, amazing, powerful drummer, swinging, and Junie Booth on bass. And a big band. But there are two tracks on there. One's called Divine Love, and the other one's called Little Brother. And one's an up-tempo, and one's a slow, medium tempo. And this is the encyclopedia of McCoy. The stuff from Train, around 65, Love Supreme, and that. And his early trio records are fantastic. But this was the penultimate. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anything more brilliant and powerful and overpowering. When you finish listening to it, you're exhausted. So I would suggest that everybody that's listening, if you don't know this record, Song of the New World, check it out and check those two tunes. It'll change your life. So piano players, you got to hear it. And he moved on, McCoy, when he became the band leader. He moves on from what he did with Train and what he did with his trio things. And he found a way to add to what he was playing and extend it and overlap. And it sounds like the ocean with these giant waves coming onto shore, just keep relentlessly coming. He never stops. And he builds it up. There isn't one extra note in there. That's the other thing. A lot of people playing McCoy style, and they do it okay, and they go too long or not interesting or not developed. McCoy, he extended the life of jazz piano, and he allowed a long solo with lots of development sections, like a symphony, like a sonata. He wasn't thinking about it. He just had that in him. But it's a great lesson for anybody that wants to check it out. And also, it's emotionally, unbelievably satisfying to me.
Maybe you can talk about his right hand in terms of the lines migrating from the more standard seconds and thirds to larger intervals like fourths.
Well, it's much more complicated than fourths. The left hand, the modal voicings are built in fourths, but also in thirds and also in other intervals. Don't get stuck on the fourth thing, because if you just use perfect fourths, you end up with a very kind of a bland sound. It was his chromatic use of these intervals. He would move up a half step, move down a half step, go up a minor third. depending on the melody note in his right hand, or depending on the particular harmonic area in his right hand line. Because you got to remember, quick lines are always moving. You can't stop them; they're moving forward, right? Mm-hmm. And his left hand was not intentionally trying to match it; it was supporting it. And there's so many choices. Let's say he had a C pedal. His left hand could be C or D. His right hand could be C and then move up to D flat. And the different kinds of motions. We all know this in classical music. There's contrary motion, which means the right hand goes one way, the left hand goes another. There's oblique motion, which means one hand stays the same, the other moves. And there's similar or parallel motion, where you see both hands move up or move down. That's basically it. And maybe a combination of that. McCoy had this down. He had it down in a way that created just completely different, fresh sounds that were fantastic. And, importantly, worked it into the fabric of the lines and with the bass and drums. It wasn't just a piano show like Art Tatum, okay? Or Oscar Peters. It was not a show. It was not worked out. McCoy was really in with the bass and drums, and of course, with the bass and drums were with him. They were not background, right? So I'm not that I want to criticize Oscar or anything, but it was a different generation. When he had Ray Brown and Dick Penn, Oscar, they were great, but it was Oscar was Oscar trio, okay, and they were backing up him, and Garrison and Elvin were much more participating in the flow. Of course, it was a piano solo. So some of it has to do with generational or age, not criticism. But yet McCoy had an enormous palette of colors and intervallic choices that he heard. By the way, when you say McCoy's influenced by Bartok or Stravinsky, yeah, sure, but it's not like he copied like phrases from the Bartok Concerto for Orchestra and put them in solos. No, that's bullshit. He was influenced. He heard that shit. In school, studied it. But it was still McCoy. We're all products of our influences. But McCoy became enormously important and emotionally satisfying, intellectually satisfying, creatively, and a great accompanist. So, what else you want, right? And a good composer. For him. Not a great composer like Bartok or that, or Duke Ellington. He was a jazz composer. It means, one page. And to create an opportunity for people to play. Look at Passion Dance, okay? It's nothing, but it's great. It's just the right shit. Blue and Green is 10 bars. It's nothing. It's G minor, A7, D. But it's the right 10 bars. And it brings you, when you finish playing the head, you are ready to play. That's what McCoy created and turned to. Herbie was more composer. That Two Dolphin Dance, Speak Like a Child, By the Child, a big voice. These tunes are fantastic, creative, fresh chord progressions, great melodies, and great formats for improvisation. And that's why everybody plays them.
Well, that was a beautiful tribute. Thank you, Richie.